scientists have finally detected gravitational waves and have proven Einstein right once and for all. Every single Zionist-owned news outlet has reported this bullshit throughout the day. The propaganda machine is working overtime right now. First you got Reuters and the Associated Press. They wouldn't stop reporting this for the last 24 hours. Then you got Washington Post, you got the Wall Street Journal, you got CNN, you got BBC News, you got Fox News, you got MSNBC. MSNBC and Fox News reporting the same propaganda. That's because they're owned and operated by the same people with the same agendas. Don't get fooled by that whole conservative liberal crap. NBC News, The Telegraph, Al Jazeera, CBS News, ABC News, Discovery News, Newsweek, Gawker, Futurism, even Neil deGrasse Tyson got in on the action today. Then you got Science Alert, I fucking love science. Even Albert Einstein himself reported on the amazing achievement of detecting gravitational waves. The propaganda machine was in full force today, and this is simply a reaction to the Flat Earth movement. This is a reaction to all the videos up on YouTube explaining how gravity doesn't exist. Gravity is a theory, an unproven theory thought up by an occultist to explain away everything that doesn't make sense on living on a spinning ball. Like why you're sticking to the bottom of it but feel upright, and why you don't feel the spin, and why you don't fall off this magical ball. Gravity was invented to explain away all common sense, to explain away everything that makes no sense on a spinning ball Earth. Okay? Even Einstein knew his whole theory of relativity was a bunch of bullshit. If the facts don't fit the theory, change the facts. That's exactly how Einstein operated. These people are in serious damage control mode. Serious damage control mode. Let's take a look at this quote from Stephen Hawking so we can understand why gravity is so important to them. Because every lie in the scientific community, or I should say the pseudo-scientific community, every lie has one agenda, and this is what it comes down to. Look at this quote. Because there is a... hold on, let me do it in the Stephen Hawking voice. Because there is a law such as gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing. Is the agenda becoming more clear? All the lies that come out of the scientific community all serve one agenda, and that's removing God from creation. Okay? Gravity is the false god of this false science. They credit gravity for everything. And gravity is magical. Gravity can do so many things. Gravity can make you stick to the ball. Gravity can make you orbit the ball. Gravity can make you feel upright at all times. Even when you're on the side of the ball or underneath it, you always feel like you're on top because of gravity and relativity. Throw away all common sense and ignore all your senses and trust their magical theory of gravity and their magical theory of relativity. You got theory on top of theory on top of theory to explain away another theory. This is not how science works. The scientific method has been thrown out the window. There is nothing scientific about that. Don't believe all this hype. Don't believe all this garbage that they've detected gravitational waves. This is pure propaganda.
Have you ever seen a satellite? Though some people claim that the moving lights they see in the night sky are satellites, consider that at a minimum height of 160 kilometers, large satellites are said to be about the size of a city bus. Now, can you see a bus at even 20 kilometers away? Not to mention that the thermosphere is also said to exist at this distance, where the 660 degrees Celsius melting point of the aluminum comprising the satellites would be far exceeded by the 2000 degrees Celsius of the thermosphere. Even the 1660 degrees Celsius melting point of some of the titanium components would be exceeded by over 300 degrees. Now, I must emphatically state here that no one has ever seen a satellite. They do not exist, and every image of one that has been presented to you has been that of a computer-generated cartoon. The Hubble Space Telescope is another deception that flat out doesn't exist either, with every image from there a work of Photoshop. The deception is further exposed in the fact that geosynchronistic satellites, which are satellites orbiting with the rotation of the Earth, are said to be in precise synchronization in orbit around the Earth, and that any deviation, even by so much as a fraction of an inch, would result in a lost signal. Though NASA says earthquakes are among the things that slow the rotation of the Earth, these alleged satellites are yet able to maintain perfect geosynchronicity, with the occurrence of mishaps few and far between. Not to mention NASA relatively ignoring the threats posed from the infinite numbers of micrometeors and space rocks shooting unpredictably like bullets through the expanses of space. So investigate the subject for yourself and ask questions.
Fiber optics are increasingly attractive for laying cables over huge distances, as in this underwater cable. Because a conventional coaxial cable becomes weakened or suffers attenuation, repeaters are needed every 4 or 5 kilometers to boost the signal. The lower attenuation of optical fibers allows for much longer lengths to be spliced together and buried at sea. Fiber optics that are less than a millimeter thick are bound together and protected by armored cladding. To prevent snags from shipping, the cable is then buried by this submersible sea plow. Over such lengths, fiber optics still need to use some repeaters, converting optical to electrical signals, boosting them and then converting them back to optical. But once the final connections are made, the optical fibers will carry many times the amount of information.
The Earth. Wait for it. Wait for it. It's supposedly here. An insignificantly tiny speck, they say. Somewhere in this vast vacuum. Ah, yes. The infinite vacuum of space. Said to be in direct contact with the atmosphere of Earth. Yes, But the atmosphere is, of course, gas and should expand indefinitely to fill its container. But since the container of Earth's atmosphere is the entire area of space, then it should follow the second law of thermodynamics and establish equilibrium, as is the case in every single experiment ever conducted. In other words, after the alleged 4.5 billion years of Earth speeding around the sun at over 100,000 kilometers per hour, the atmosphere should have long since dissipated by now. But there's gravity, people argue, maintaining the atmosphere perfectly. Right, whilst of course allowing simultaneous cross-directional winds to blow, insects to hover, birds to take off and fly, smoke to rise, not to mention helium-filled balloons, etc., etc., notwithstanding that it has never been shown that any object will attract matter to it due to its mass alone. So, let's just turn to investigate the vehicles of space and ask, can rockets work in a vacuum? A logically necessary question. Well, to answer, rockets require matter to push against in order to move forward. And according to repeatable experiments, rockets simply spin violently out of control when placed to function in a vacuum. Now, consider during Apollo 17 how the astronauts were able to capture the blue marble image at only 1/10 of the distance to the moon. This is akin to taking a picture of the runway from an airplane shortly after takeoff. This fact alone raises suspicions, but becomes even more apparent when one realizes that NASA only releases rear-facing footage from their rockets, and never forward-facing footage. But NASA admitting to the threat of drowning in space is the loudest testimony against their charade, with bubbles being caught rising on spacewalk footage, supposedly being carried out in the vacuum of space. Really? What substance is lighter than a vacuum so that it can rise in it? So investigate the subject for yourself and ask questions. The International Space Station, at an orbital height of over 300 kilometers in the thermosphere. Wait, the thermosphere? You mean where it is said to reach extreme temperatures due to the absorption of highly energized solar radiation? Because the International Space Station is comprised mostly of aluminum, the melting point of which is a mere 660 degrees Celsius, compared to the 2000 degrees Celsius said to exist in the thermosphere. NASA only digs their grave deeper when they then claim that the air molecules in the thermosphere are so sparse that the temperature can't even transfer to a thermometer, going so far as to say it actually feels cold in the thermosphere. Okay. Don't ask me how they were able to then measure the 2000 degrees Celsius in the first place. But then you ask me, how is the International Space Station electrically grounded? And you've stumped me. So we ask NASA, and their response is that the ISS is grounded by the very air surrounding it. Wait, you mean to tell me that air that's so sparse it won't even register the intense temperature of 2000 degrees Celsius onto a thermometer is able to maintain the electrical grounding of the entire space station? Since when does air ever discharge static? But before we get sucked down into absurdity, let's consider the velocity of Earth through space, and then take into consideration the innumerable amounts of not only meteors, but micrometeors, interstellar space dust, and floating debris, all traveling at comparable speeds, which should all pose a very real and constant threat, not only to the International Space Station, but to all the astronauts said to be on board. In fact, the sheer infinitude of undetectable micrometeors shooting through space from whichever haphazard impact like bullets should make every spacewalk a real life-threatening assignment. But every astronaut is always laughing about how much fun their jobs all are, whilst constantly inserting lame attempts to identify with viewers. They even go so far as to hairspraying their female astronauts' hair, making it look like anything but authentic weightlessness. The scenes where they are on harnesses are equally as laughable, as well as when turbulence is encountered on their outfitted zero-G planes, not to mention bubbles being caught on film during their spacewalks. Though there is a trackable image resembling the International Space Station as it is said to move across the sky, the image is strangely prismatic, resembling a hologram, and does not in fact look like an actual orbiting piece of machinery. Clearly, for the reasons already stated, the International Space Station cannot exist the way NASA claims. So investigate the subject for yourself and ask questions.